The Deep Space Monitoring Station floated silently in the void between star systems, its crystalline sensors stretched out like the arms of a mechanical spider, collecting data from thousands of worlds across the galaxy. Inside the station, Coordinator Vex 9 reviewed the daily reports with the same bored efficiency he had shown for the past 3 centuries. The Galactic Council had built these stations long ago to watch over the younger species. Most worlds never progressed beyond simple agriculture. Some reached basic industry before destroying themselves with wars or pollution. Very few ever became interesting enough to warrant direct contact. Vex 9's 4 eyes scanned the data streams flowing across his workstation. The usual patterns appeared on his screens. The Carillion Empire had expanded to another system. The Threx Confederation was building new mining platforms. The Zilani hegemony was testing improved plasma cannons. Nothing unusual for the established powers. Then he noticed the small blinking indicator in the corner of his display. Sector 7749, a yellow dwarf star with several rocky planets. The system had been flagged decades ago when one of the planets started broadcasting primitive radio signals. Now the indicator showed increased activity. Vex 9 pulled up the detailed report. Planet designation, Terra 3. Local name, Earth. The inhabitants called themselves humans. The monitoring systems had been tracking their progress since they discovered electricity. The data showed rapid advancement. In just a few centuries, these humans had gone from simple steam engines to splitting atoms. Their technology grew faster than most species the Council had observed. But this was not entirely uncommon. Many young races showed quick bursts of development before hitting natural barriers. What caught Vex 9's attention was the recent electromagnetic signature analysis. The humans had been experimenting with something called railguns. The computer systems classified these as kinetic acceleration devices, primitive projectile weapons using magnetic fields instead of chemical explosives. Vex 9 reviewed the technical data. The humans were accelerating small metal objects to impressive velocities. Their latest tests showed projectiles reaching several kilometers per second. For a species that had only recently left their home planet, this was noteworthy progress. Still, the technology seemed limited. The Council's own archives contained records of similar weapons from thousands of years ago. Most advanced species had moved beyond kinetic projectiles long before reaching the stars. Energy weapons were far more efficient. Plasma cannons could adjust their power output. Particle beams could penetrate most materials. Quantum disruptors could break apart matter at the atomic level. Kinetic weapons were crude by comparison. They required massive amounts of energy to accelerate heavy projectiles. They could only fire in straight lines. They had limited range in space combat where targets could maneuver at great distances. Most importantly, they were easily stopped by standard deflector shields that had protected galactic warships for millennia. Vex 9 tagged the human development as interesting but not concerning, and moved on to other reports. The decision would later be remembered as one of the greatest intelligence failures in galactic history. On Earth, Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of the Luna 7 research facility. Through the reinforced windows, she could see the massive railgun array stretching across the lunar surface. The electromagnetic coils formed a tunnel nearly 2 kilometers long, pointing out toward the empty space beyond Earth's moon. "Final systems check complete," announced her assistant, Dr. Martinez. "All power couplings are stable. Magnetic field generators are operating at maximum efficiency. Target drone is in position at 50,000 kilometers. Sarah nodded. Today's test would be their most ambitious yet. Previous experiments had accelerated small projectiles to impressive speeds, but nothing like what they were attempting now. The new power systems could channel the output of 3 fusion reactors directly into the railgun's magnetic coils. "What's the projected velocity?" Sarah asked. Martinez checked his calculations again. "If everything works perfectly, we should reach 8% of light speed. The tungsten rod will hit the target in less than 2 seconds. Sarah felt her heart racing. 8% of light speed was faster than any human-made object had ever traveled. The kinetic energy would be enormous. Even a small tungsten rod would hit with the force of a nuclear weapon. "Begin the test sequence," she ordered. The facility's lights dimmed as power flowed into the railgun. The magnetic coils began to glow with contained energy. Warning sirens echoed through the corridors as automated systems confirmed that no ships or satellites were in the weapon's path. Sarah watched the countdown timer reach 0. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then a brilliant flash lit up the lunar landscape as the tungsten rod was launched into space. The electromagnetic pulse from the firing was so intense that it temporarily disrupted communications across the entire Earth-Moon system. 50,000 kilometers away, the target drone disappeared in a burst of vaporized metal and released energy. The destruction was so complete that the monitoring systems barely detected any debris. Dr. Martinez stared at his instruments in amazement. The velocity readings are confirmed. 8.2% of light speed. The kinetic energy release was equivalent to a 50-megaton nuclear warhead. Sarah smiled with satisfaction. The test had exceeded all expectations. But she was already thinking about the next phase of development. Larger projectiles, higher velocities, more powerful magnetic coils. The potential applications were limitless. Neither Sarah nor her team realized that their test had been detected by sensors light years away. The electromagnetic signature of the railgun firing had rippled through space, carrying information about human capabilities to distant monitoring stations. Back at the Galactic Observation Post, VEX-9's automated systems dutifully recorded the energy spike from the human system. The computer analysis classified it as a mining explosion or construction accident. The signature did not match any known weapon types in the Council's databases. The report was filed under Industrial Development and given a low priority rating. No alerts were sent to the Council's military branches. No updates were made to the threat assessment for Sector 7749. This pattern continued for months as human railgun technology advanced rapidly. Each test firing was detected and logged, but the automated analysis systems consistently misidentified the signatures. The computers had been programmed to recognize the energy patterns of conventional galactic weapons. Plasma cannons produced specific electromagnetic frequencies. Particle beams created distinctive radiation signatures. Quantum disruptors generated recognizable quantum field fluctuations. But railguns produced none of these expected patterns. They were purely kinetic weapons that used electromagnetic acceleration instead of exotic energy fields. The Council's systems, designed to monitor the weapons they understood, were blind to this different approach to warfare. The few junior analysts who noticed the human developments were quickly dismissed by their superiors. The senior staff had centuries of experience monitoring primitive species. They knew what to look for in terms of dangerous technology. These humans were clearly experimenting with crude kinetic weapons that posed no threat to modern deflector shields. The Galactic Council's confidence was built on solid foundations. For thousands of years, their energy-based weapons and defensive systems had dominated space warfare. No species had ever developed technology that could challenge this established order. The shield generators that protected their ships could deflect any known projectile weapon. The plasma cannons that armed their fleets could destroy any target within their range. As reports continued to arrive from Sector 7749, the Council's assessment remained unchanged. The humans were an interesting but primitive species that would eventually be welcomed into galactic civilization once they matured beyond their violent tendencies. Their crude weapons experiments were nothing more than the expected growing pains of a young technological society. The signals kept coming. The warnings went unheeded, and in the depths of space, humanity continued building weapons that would soon rewrite the rules of galactic warfare. 20 years had passed since the first successful railgun tests on Luna 7. The technology that had once amazed Dr. Sarah Chen was now considered outdated by human standards. The research facility that had celebrated 8% of light speed was now a museum, visited by engineering students who marveled at how primitive their ancestors had been. Commander Jackson Torres stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus, humanity's newest deep space exploration vessel. Through the main view screen, he could see the massive railgun turrets that lined the ship's hull. Each weapon was larger than the entire Luna 7 facility had been, powered by antimatter reactors that would have seemed like magic to the previous generation. "Captain, we're approaching the test coordinates," reported Lieutenant Kim from the navigation station. "All systems are green. The target asteroid is confirmed at 200,000 kilometers distance." Torres nodded. Today's firing test was routine by current standards, but it would have been impossible just decades earlier. The Prometheus carried 12 main railgun batteries, each capable of accelerating tungsten rods to 25% of light speed. The kinetic energy from a single shot could crack a small moon, Weapons, prepare Battery 7 for test firing, Torres ordered. Single shot minimum charge. The weapons officer began the charging sequence. Deep within the ship, massive capacitors drew power from the antimatter reactor. Electromagnetic coils that stretched the length of 3 city blocks began to generate the magnetic fields needed for acceleration. Battery 7 charged and ready, sir. Target locked. Fire when ready. The railgun discharged with a sound that resonated through the ship's hull. The tungsten rod, weighing just 50 kilograms, streaked across space at a quarter of the speed of light. It reached the target asteroid in less than 3 seconds. The result was spectacular. The asteroid, roughly the size of a city block, simply ceased to exist. The kinetic impact released more energy than the largest nuclear weapons humanity had ever built. Where solid rock had been, now only an expanding cloud of superheated plasma remained. Direct hit confirmed, reported the sensors officer. Target completely destroyed. Electromagnetic pulse detected at magnitude 7, no debris larger than pebble size detected. Torres smiled with satisfaction. The test had been perfect. The new railgun design was even more powerful than the engineers had predicted. But for him, this was just another day at work. The human fleet now had over 300 ships equipped with similar weapons. Some of the newer designs could reach 30% of light speed. What Torres did not know was that his routine weapons test had been observed by sensors belonging to the Galactic Council. The electromagnetic pulse from the railgun firing had traveled through subspace, reaching monitoring stations across multiple star systems. At Observation Post Kepler 9, senior analyst Keth 4 reviewed the latest data from human space. The electromagnetic readings were stronger than ever before. The energy signatures suggested that the humans were conducting massive industrial operations. Keith 4 belonged to a species called the Vorthak, known throughout the galaxy for their analytical abilities. His people had served as the Council's primary intelligence gatherers for over 2,000 years. They prided themselves on their ability to interpret data that confused other species. But even Keth 4 was puzzled by the human readings. The energy patterns were unlike anything in the Council's databases. The closest match was the signature produced by large-scale asteroid mining operations. The humans appeared to be breaking apart enormous amounts of rock and metal in space. They must be expanding their industrial base very rapidly, Keth 4 muttered to himself. These energy readings suggest they are processing millions of tons of raw materials. He pulled up the historical data from human space. The pattern was clear. Over the past 20 years, the electromagnetic signatures had grown steadily stronger and more frequent. The humans were obviously building something massive, probably space habitats or manufacturing facilities. This interpretation made sense to Keth 4. Young species often went through rapid expansion phases when they first developed efficient space travel. The humans were probably eager to establish colonies and mining operations throughout their local region of space. The fact that the energy signatures came in short, intense bursts did not concern him. Many industrial processes produced similar patterns. Plasma cutters used to break apart asteroids often created brief but powerful electromagnetic pulses. Fusion welders produced intense energy spikes when joining large metal structures. Keth 4 filed his report under Industrial Expansion, Normal Pattern, and moved on to other systems. He recommended continued monitoring but saw no need for immediate action. The humans appeared to be following the typical development path of most spacefaring species. This assessment was shared by analysts throughout the Council's intelligence network. The human energy signatures were noted and catalogued, but always interpreted as signs of peaceful industrial activity. The possibility that these readings came from weapons tests never occurred to the observers. The Council's failure to recognize the truth was not entirely their fault. Their understanding of warfare had been shaped by thousands of years of fighting with energy-based weapons. When the Council's species first reached the stars, they had all developed similar technologies. Plasma cannons that fired superheated gas, particle beams that accelerated subatomic projectiles, energy shields that deflected incoming attacks. This shared technological foundation had led to standardized military doctrines. Space battles were fought at extreme ranges using energy weapons that could be precisely aimed and controlled. Defensive systems were designed to absorb or deflect energy-based attacks. Kinetic weapons were considered obsolete relics from the age of chemical propulsion. The few species that had experimented with advanced kinetic weapons had quickly abandoned them. The energy requirements were enormous compared to plasma cannons. The weapons could only fire in straight lines, making them easy to avoid in the three-dimensional battlefield of space. Most importantly, kinetic projectiles were easily stopped by deflector shields that could redirect their momentum. No rational military planner would invest in kinetic weapons when energy-based alternatives were clearly superior. This assumption was so fundamental to Council thinking that their sensors were not even calibrated to detect advanced railgun signatures. As the years passed, the human energy readings continued to grow stronger. The electromagnetic pulses became more frequent and more powerful, but the Council's interpretation never changed. The humans were clearly becoming a major industrial power, but they showed no signs of developing threatening military technology. Some junior analysts occasionally suggested that the energy patterns might indicate weapon testing. These suggestions were politely dismissed by senior staff, who pointed out the obvious flaws in kinetic weapon systems. No advanced species would waste resources on such primitive technology. The Council's confidence was reinforced by their own military exercises. Regular war games between member species demonstrated the continued effectiveness of energy-based weapons and deflector shields. The most powerful plasma cannons in the galaxy could be completely neutralized by properly configured defensive systems. In one memorable exercise, the Zelani hegemony had fired their most advanced particle cannon at a Corellian defense platform. The beam, carrying enough energy to boil an ocean, had been completely absorbed by the platform's shields. The Corellians had then responded with a quantum disruptor that briefly disabled the Zelani ship's systems before their own shields adapted to the attack. These exercises proved that the current balance of offensive and defensive technology heavily favored defense. Space battles typically lasted for hours or even days, as opposing fleets tried to overwhelm each other's shields through sustained bombardment. Decisive victories were rare and usually came from superior numbers or better positioning rather than technological advantages. This stable military environment had existed for so long that most Council members could not imagine any fundamental change. The laws of physics that governed energy weapons and deflector shields were well understood. No breakthrough in these fields seemed possible, but physics also governed the behavior of matter in motion. Kinetic energy increased with the square of velocity. A projectile moving at a significant fraction of light speed carried enormous destructive potential, and unlike energy beams, solid matter could not be easily deflected or absorbed by conventional shields. The humans understood these principles better than any species in galactic history. Their industrial civilization had been built on manipulating matter and energy in ways that other species found crude but effective. Their approach to problem-solving emphasized practical results over theoretical elegance. While the Council debated the philosophical implications of quantum field theory, humans built bigger railguns. While alien scientists wrote papers on exotic energy manipulation, human engineers found new ways to make tungsten rods fly faster. The signals from human space grew stronger every day. The warnings continued to be ignored, and somewhere in the depths of space, the first human warships began their journey toward the edge of Council territory. The UES Endeavour dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge, watching as her crew ran the standard post-jump diagnostics. This was humanity's first venture beyond their local stellar neighborhood, and everyone aboard felt the weight of history. "Navigation confirms our position," reported the helm officer. "We are exactly where we planned to be. Jump drive is cycling down normally. All systems are green." Vasquez nodded with satisfaction. The new jump drive technology had worked perfectly, carrying them 47 light-years from Earth in just 6 hours. The journey that would have taken their ancestors thousands of years had become routine. "Sensors, begin long-range scans," she ordered. "Look for any signs of artificial structures or energy signatures. Science team, start collecting data on the local stellar environment." The Endeavour was not a warship, despite the massive railgun turrets that dominated her hull. She was an exploration vessel, designed to make first contact with whatever intelligent life humanity might encounter among the stars. The weapons were purely defensive, installed after military advisors had pointed out the dangers of traveling unarmed into unknown space. For 3 days, the Endeavour explored the outer reaches of the Kepler 442 system. They found several interesting planets and moons, but no signs of intelligent life. The crew began to relax, thinking they had discovered another empty system to add to humanity's growing star charts. Then the aliens appeared. "Captain, we have multiple contacts approaching from the inner system," called out Lieutenant Commander Park from the sensor station. "3 ships, unknown configuration. They appear to be using some form of faster-than-light propulsion I don't recognize." Vasquez felt her pulse quicken. After decades of speculation and preparation, humanity was finally meeting another intelligent species. "Put them on the main screen. Communications, try to establish contact using the standard first contact protocols." The alien ships resolved on the view screen as they drew closer. They were sleek vessels with curved hulls that seemed to flow like liquid metal. Strange energy patterns played across their surfaces in mesmerizing displays of light and color. They were beautiful in a way that human ship designers had never imagined. "I'm detecting no hostile actions," reported the tactical officer. "Their weapons are powered down. Energy shields are inactive. They appear to be approaching in a peaceful manner." In the lead alien ship, Commander Zix-7 of the Galactic Council Border Patrol reviewed the strange vessel that had appeared in his sector. The ship's design was crude but functional, clearly the work of a species that had only recently developed interstellar travel. The hull was covered with what appeared to be primitive kinetic weapons, probably railguns based on the electromagnetic signatures his sensors detected. Zix-7 belonged to a species called the Altarians, known for their diplomatic skills and peaceful nature. His people had been conducting first contact operations for the Council for over 800 years. They knew how to approach primitive species without causing panic or misunderstandings. "Reduce speed to 1/4, Zix-7 ordered his crew. "Lower all defensive screens. I want these newcomers to see that we come in peace." The Altarian ships slowed their approach and dimmed their running lights to appear less threatening. Zix-7 had performed this ritual hundreds of times with dozens of different species. Young civilizations were always nervous during first contact, and it was important to put them at ease. "Commander, we are receiving transmissions from the unknown vessel," reported his communications officer. "They appear to be using basic radio frequencies. The mathematical patterns suggest an attempt at peaceful communication." Zix-7 smiled with his species equivalent of pleasure. "Excellent. Begin the standard greeting sequence. Use the universal mathematical constants and basic pictographic symbols. Let them know we are friends." On the Endeavor, the communications team worked frantically to decode the alien transmissions. The signals contained complex mathematical formulas and simple geometric shapes that seemed designed to establish common ground between different species. "Captain, I think they're trying to show us they're peaceful," reported the communications officer. "The mathematical sequences include concepts like pi and the golden ratio. The pictographs show what appear to be friendly gestures." Vasquez felt relief wash over her. "Respond with our own mathematical greetings. Let them know we understand their intentions and that we also come in peace." For several hours, the two groups exchanged increasingly complex messages. The aliens demonstrated remarkable patience as they slowly built up a basic communication protocol. They shared star charts showing their territory, mathematical concepts that revealed their level of technology, and simple pictographs that seemed to convey friendship and curiosity. The humans responded with their own information, carefully selected to show their peaceful intentions, without revealing too much about their capabilities. Both sides seemed eager to establish positive relations. Then everything went wrong. The alien ship suddenly activated what appeared to be some kind of tractor beam technology. Powerful energy fields reached out from their vessels and began to pull the Endeavor toward them. The human ship's engines struggled against the invisible force but could not break free. "Captain, they've got us locked in some kind of energy field," reported the helm officer. "I can't regain control of our movement. We're being pulled toward their ships." Vasquez felt panic rising in her chest. "Communications demand an explanation. Ask them why they are restraining our ship." The response from the aliens was calm and reassuring. Their mathematical transmissions indicated that this was standard procedure for first contact situations. The energy field was described as a guidance system that would bring the human ship to a processing facility where proper diplomatic protocols could be followed. But to the humans, this looked like an attack. Their ship was being controlled by hostile forces against their will. The peaceful exploration mission had suddenly turned into a potential capture scenario. "Captain, recommend we break free immediately," urged Commander Torres. the ship's tactical officer. "This could be an attempt to board us or steal our technology." Vasquez hesitated. The situation was ambiguous. The aliens claimed their actions were peaceful, but they were clearly taking control of her ship without permission. Every instinct told her to fight back, but she also knew that firing the first shot could start an interstellar war. "Send one more message," she decided. "Tell them to release our ship immediately or we will consider it an act of hostility." The alien response was polite but firm. The guidance procedure was required by galactic law. All new species had to be processed at designated facilities before they could be granted freedom of movement in Council space. This was for everyone's safety and had been standard practice for thousands of years. To Zik-7, this was routine bureaucracy. His people had guided countless ships to processing stations where new species learned about galactic civilization and received their official status as members of the community. The humans were simply being inducted into the established order, just like everyone else. But the humans had no context for understanding galactic law or council procedures. All they knew was that aliens were taking control of their ship and forcing them to go somewhere against their will. From their perspective, this was clearly hostile action that demanded a response. "Captain, their energy field is getting stronger," reported the tactical officer. "If we're going to break free, we need to act now." Vasquez made the decision that would change galactic history forever. "All hands battle stations. Weapons target their tractor beam generators. Prepare to fire on my command." The Endeavor's railgun turrets swiveled toward the alien ships, their massive electromagnetic coils beginning to charge with deadly energy. The humans were about to demonstrate why their species had survived and thrived in a dangerous universe. But the aliens had no idea what was coming. Their sensors detected the energy buildup in the human weapons, but their computers classified the signatures as industrial equipment powering up. Nothing in their experience suggested that kinetic weapons could pose a threat to modern starships. "Captain, the newcomers appear to be activating their mining equipment," reported the Altarian sensor officer, "probably trying to use it to break free of our guidance field." Zik-7 was not concerned. His ship's deflector shields could easily handle any primitive kinetic weapons the humans might possess. The guidance field would hold them securely until they reached the processing station. "Maintain current course," he ordered. "Continue with standard procedures." Neither side fully understood what the other was doing. The aliens thought they were following peaceful first contact protocols. The humans believed they were defending themselves against hostile aliens. Both groups were acting according to their own cultural values and military training. In a few more seconds, the misunderstanding would explode into violence that neither side had wanted or expected. High Admiral Thexus Vor stood on the command deck of the massive dreadnought, Glory of Zalani, watching as his armada formed up in perfect battle formation. 300 ships from across the Galactic Council had assembled for this mission, representing the greatest military force seen in this sector for over 1,000 years. The Admiral belonged to the Zalani hegemony, a proud warrior species that had never lost a space battle in their entire recorded history. His people were natural tacticians who understood the art of war better than any other race in the galaxy. When the Council needed military problems solved, they called the Zalani. "Admiral, all ships report ready for departure," announced his aide, Commander Rex 9. "The fleet includes 150 heavy cruisers, 100 destroyers, 30 battleships, 15 dreadnoughts, and 5 supercarriers. Every major council species is represented." Thexus nodded with satisfaction. The Armada was massive overkill for dealing with a primitive species that had attacked a single border patrol, but the Council wanted to send a clear message to any other young races that might be watching. Attacking Council ships would result in swift and overwhelming retaliation. "Signal the fleet," Thexus commanded. "All ships will jump to the human system simultaneously. We will emerge in standard battle formation and demand their immediate surrender. If they refuse, we will demonstrate the consequences of challenging the established galactic order." The Admiral had reviewed all available intelligence on the humans before departing. The species appeared to be typical newcomers to space travel, armed with primitive kinetic weapons that posed no threat to modern starships. Their attack on the border patrol had succeeded only because the Altarian ships had lowered their shields in accordance with peaceful first contact protocols. This mistake would not be repeated. The Armada would approach with full shields raised and weapons ready. The humans would face the full military might of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. They would surrender quickly once they realized the hopelessness of their situation. The battle plan was simple and traditional. The supercarriers would deploy their fighter squadrons to establish space superiority. The battleships and dreadnoughts would form the main battle line, using their heavy plasma cannons to overwhelm any human defensive positions. The cruisers and destroyers would sweep around the flanks to prevent escape attempts. It was the same tactical doctrine that had served the Council for millennia. Energy weapons would pound the enemy until their shields failed and their ships were destroyed. Any survivors would be taken prisoner and brought before galactic tribunals to answer for their crimes. All ships report ready for hyperspace jump, announced the fleet communications officer. Coordinates are locked in. We will emerge at the edge of the human system in perfect formation. Thexis smiled with the predatory satisfaction of his species. Execute jump. Let us show these primitives the price of defying the Council. The massive fleet disappeared into hyperspace, carrying the combined military power of a dozen species toward what they believed would be a simple police action against backward rebels. 3 days later, the Armada emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. The sight that greeted them was impressive by primitive standards. The humans had built extensive orbital installations around their home world and several other planets. Massive space stations rotated slowly in the void, connected by streams of cargo ships and passenger vessels. Scan all facilities, Thexis ordered. I want a complete tactical assessment of their defensive capabilities. The sensor reports confirmed what the Admiral had expected. The human installations were protected by primitive point defense systems and basic energy shields. Their mobile fleet consisted of perhaps 50 ships, most of them lightly armed exploration vessels. A few larger ships showed evidence of kinetic weapon systems, but nothing that could threaten the Council Armada. Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the human fleet, reported the communications officer. They are demanding that we state our intentions and withdraw from their system immediately. Thexis laughed with genuine amusement. Demanding? They are in no position to make demands. Open a channel to their entire system. I want every human to hear this message. The transmission was broadcast on all frequencies, ensuring that every human ship and station would receive it. Thexis spoke in the formal diplomatic language used for communicating with primitive species. I am High Admiral Thexis, 4 of the Galactic Council Defense Force. You have committed an act of war against the peaceful forces of the galactic community. 3 of our ships were destroyed without provocation, while conducting routine first contact procedures. This aggression cannot be tolerated, he paused for effect, knowing that the humans would be scrambling to understand the magnitude of their situation. However, the Council is merciful to young species who have not yet learned proper galactic protocols. You have 1 hour to surrender your entire fleet and submit to Council authority. Your leaders will be taken into custody to face trial for war crimes. Your population will be placed under Council supervision until you demonstrate that you can behave as civilized beings. The response from the human fleet was immediate and defiant. Captain Elena Vasquez, now serving as the overall fleet commander, transmitted a reply that surprised the Admiral with its boldness. Admiral Vor, we reject your ultimatum completely. Our ships acted in self-defense when your forces attempted to capture one of our vessels against our will. We have no intention of surrendering to an organization that conducts diplomacy at gunpoint. If you want to fight, you'll get one. Thexis was genuinely puzzled by the human response. Most primitive species immediately surrendered when faced with overwhelming force. The few that chose to fight usually tried to negotiate for better terms or asked for time to evacuate their civilians. But these humans seemed prepared to fight against impossible odds without even attempting to bargain. Their defiance was either the result of courage or stupidity. The Admiral suspected it was the latter. Very well, Thexis replied. You have chosen your fate. All ships advance to attack formation. Prepare to demonstrate the futility of challenging the Council. The massive Armada began moving toward the inner system in perfect order. The supercarriers launched their fighter squadrons, filling space with thousands of small attack craft. The battleships and dreadnoughts formed a wall of armor and firepower that stretched across millions of kilometers. The sight was magnificent and terrible, a display of military power that should have convinced any rational enemy to surrender immediately. The human fleet moved to intercept them, their 50 ships looking pathetically small against the Council Armada. They formed up in what appeared to be a standard defensive formation, clearly intending to protect their homeworld from the advancing alien forces. Texas almost felt sorry for them. Their courage was admirable, but courage alone could not overcome such overwhelming technological and numerical superiority. The battle would be over in minutes once his ships came within weapons range. "Admiral, the human ships are beginning to charge their weapon systems," reported the tactical officer. "Energy signatures suggest they are preparing to fire those primitive railguns. Let them waste their ammunition," Texas replied dismissively. "Our shields will absorb whatever kinetic energy they can generate. Once they exhaust themselves with futile attacks, we will close in and disable their ships with minimal casualties." The Admiral's confidence was shared throughout the Armada. None of the Council ship commanders felt any concern about the approaching battle. Their vessels were protected by deflector shields that had been perfected over thousands of years of warfare. The energy barriers could stop any known projectile weapon and had never been penetrated by kinetic attacks. The human railguns appeared to be more advanced than typical primitive weapons, but they were still just magnetic accelerators firing chunks of metal. The basic physics had not changed since the ancient days when such weapons were considered state-of-the-art. Modern shields would handle them easily. As the two fleets closed the distance between them, Texas reviewed the tactical display with satisfaction. His ships outgunned the humans by more than 6-1. They had better armor, more advanced shields and weapon systems that had been refined by centuries of conflict. The outcome was predetermined. "All ships prepare to fire on my command," he announced to the fleet. "We will open with a full plasma barrage to demonstrate our power. If the humans have any sense left, they will surrender before we are forced to destroy them all." The Council ships began charging their plasma cannons and particle beam weapons. Energy readings spiked across the Armada as power flowed to the massive guns that could burn through planetary atmospheres. In a few more minutes, the humans would face the full fury of galactic civilization. Neither side knew that they were about to participate in the most one-sided battle in galactic history. But it would not be one-sided in the way that anyone expected. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UES Endeavour, now serving as the flagship of humanity's hastily assembled defense fleet. Through the main view screen, she could see the approaching Council Armada, a wall of alien ships that seemed to stretch across half the solar system. "Tactical analysis complete," reported Commander Torres from the weapons station. 300 ships confirmed. Multiple ship classes including what appear to be supercarriers and dreadnoughts. Energy readings suggest they're charging conventional plasma weapons and particle beams. Vasquez nodded grimly. The odds were overwhelming, but humanity had faced impossible situations before. "All ships, final weapons check. I want every railgun charged and ready. Remember, we only get one chance to show these aliens what humans are capable of." The 50 ships of the human fleet were drastically outnumbered, but each one carried weapons that the aliens had never encountered before. The newest generation of railguns could accelerate tungsten rods to 35% of light speed. The kinetic energy from such projectiles was almost beyond comprehension. "Captain, receiving transmission from the alien flagship," reported the communications officer. On the main screen, High Admiral Texas Vor appeared in all his intimidating glory. The Zilani leader was clearly accustomed to having his enemies surrender at the sight of his massive fleet. "This is your final warning, humans. Surrender now or face complete destruction. Your primitive weapons cannot penetrate our deflector shields. This battle will end only in your defeat." Vasquez stepped forward, her voice calm and steady despite the desperate situation. "Admiral, you have invaded our system and threatened our people. We will not surrender to bullies, no matter how big their fleet might be. If you want Earth, you'll have to take it from us." The transmission ended and both fleets continued their approach toward the inevitable collision. The distance between them shrank rapidly as massive starships raced through the void at significant fractions of light speed. "Range is now 1 million kilometers and closing," announced the tactical officer. "The alien ships are maintaining formation. Energy readings suggest they plan to open fire at maximum plasma cannon range." Vasquez checked the chronometer. "All ships prepare for combat. Remember the plan. Wait for my signal, then give them everything we've got." On the Council flagship, Admiral Texas watched as his fleet moved into optimal firing position. The humans continued their suicidal charge, apparently intending to ram his ships rather than engage at long range. Their tactical incompetence was almost embarrassing to witness. "All ships prepare to fire," Thexus commanded. "Target the largest human vessels first. Once we destroy their flagship, the rest will lose morale and surrender." The Council fleet began its attack with devastating precision. Hundreds of plasma cannons fired simultaneously, sending streams of superheated gas racing toward the human ships. Particle beams followed, carrying enough energy to boil seas. The combined firepower was enough to sterilize a planet. But the human ships were no longer where the weapons had been aimed. At the last possible moment, they had scattered in all directions, using their superior acceleration to avoid the alien fire. The plasma streams and particle beams passed harmlessly through empty space. "Evasive maneuvers complete," reported Torres. "All ships avoided the first barrage. The aliens are recharging for another volley." Vasquez smiled grimly. The human fleet might be outnumbered, but their ships were faster and more maneuverable than the massive alien vessels. They could avoid the enemy's energy weapons while closing to optimal firing range for their own guns. "All ships advance to point-blank range," she ordered. "Make them think we're trying to ram them. Let them focus on avoiding collision while we line up our shots." The human ships accelerated directly toward the alien fleet, appearing to have abandoned all tactical sense in favor of desperate kamikaze attacks. The Council ships tried to track them with their weapons, but the humans were moving too fast and changing direction too frequently. Admiral Thexus watched the tactical display with growing confusion. The human ships were behaving irrationally, charging straight into his formation where they would be torn apart by close-range fire. Either their commanders had lost their minds or they were planning something that he did not understand. "All ships prepare for close combat," he ordered. "The humans appear to be attempting ramming attacks. Destroy them before they can reach us." The alien ships opened fire again, filling space with deadly energy beams and explosive plasma bursts. Several human ships took glancing hits that overloaded their shields and damaged their hull armor, but they continued their desperate charge, weaving between the alien guns like fighters dodging anti-aircraft fire. Then, when the range had closed to just 50,000 kilometers, the humans finally revealed their true plan. "All ships open fire," Vasquez commanded. "Give them hell!" 50 railguns fired simultaneously, hurling tungsten rods at 35% of light speed directly into the heart of the alien formation. The electromagnetic pulses from the firing were so intense that they temporarily blinded sensors throughout both fleets. The tungsten projectiles crossed the remaining distance in less than half a second. They struck the alien ships before anyone had time to react, punching through deflector shields as if they did not exist. The deflector shields that had protected galactic warships for thousands of years were designed to deflect energy beams and absorb plasma bursts. They worked by creating electromagnetic fields that could redirect charged particles and disperse energy weapons, but they had no effect on solid matter traveling at relativistic speeds. The tungsten rods passed through the shields like bullets through tissue paper. They struck the alien ships with kinetic energy equivalent to gigaton-range nuclear weapons. The results were catastrophic. The first ship to be hit was a Carillion heavy cruiser. The tungsten rod punched completely through its hull, vaporizing everything in its path. The kinetic energy release tore the ship in half, turning a kilometer-long warship into an expanding cloud of superheated debris. Across the alien formation, similar scenes of destruction played out in rapid succession. Battleships that had survived countless battles simply ceased to exist. Dreadnoughts that had been considered unsinkable broke apart like children's toys. Supercarriers disappeared in brilliant flashes of released energy. "Direct hits on 47 enemy ships," reported Torres, his voice filled with amazement. "Complete destruction confirmed on all targets. No survivors detected. The alien fleet was in chaos. In less than 30 seconds, they had lost nearly 1/6 of their total force to weapons they had not even known existed." Ships scattered in all directions as commanders tried to understand what had happened to their supposedly invincible deflector shields. Admiral Thexus stared at his tactical display in shock. 47 ships had simply vanished from his fleet roster. The energy readings from the impacts suggested nuclear-level explosions, but his sensors had detected no energy weapons fire from the human ships. "What happened?" he demanded. "How did they penetrate our shields?" The sensor officer was frantically reviewing the data, trying to make sense of readings that violated everything he knew about space warfare. "Admiral, the humans appear to have fired solid projectiles at extreme velocity. The kinetic energy was enormous, but our shields were not designed to stop physical matter at such speeds. The revelation hit Thexus like a physical blow. The humans had not been using energy weapons at all. They had developed kinetic weapons so advanced that they could punch through any known defensive system. The entire foundation of galactic military theory had just been proven obsolete. All ships emergency scatter pattern, he commanded. Maintain maximum distance from human vessels. Do not let them get within firing range again. But it was too late. The human ships were already reloading their railguns, preparing for a second devastating volley. And unlike the alien energy weapons that required time to recharge and cool down, the human kinetic weapons could fire repeatedly with minimal delay. The second barrage came just 2 minutes later. Another 50 tungsten rods streaked across space at impossible speeds, each one aimed at a different alien ship. The Council fleet tried to evade, but their massive vessels were too slow to avoid projectiles traveling at over 100,000 kilometers per second. More ships died in brilliant explosions of released kinetic energy. The proud fleet that had arrived to punish primitive humans was being systematically annihilated by weapons that should not have been able to threaten them. By the end of the first hour, over half the Council Armada had been destroyed. The survivors were in full retreat, jumping to hyperspace as quickly as their damaged ships could manage. They left behind a debris field that would be visible from Earth for decades. Admiral Thexus was among the few who escaped, his flagship barely surviving a near miss that had vaporized 2 escort ships. As his vessel limped away through hyperspace, he composed the report that would change galactic civilization forever. Council Command, this is Admiral Thexus reporting emergency contact. The human fleet has been encountered and engaged. Result: total defeat of Council forces. Human weapons utilize kinetic projectiles at relativistic speeds that completely bypass deflector shields. Current tactical doctrine is obsolete.